Welcome to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. Let's get right into it. I have with me in studio State Representative Brad Halbrook and State Representative Dan Caulkins. These guys are going to just give you a quick rundown about what happened during session this year, and it's pretty alarming. Can we start with illegal immigrants, though? Let's just start there, because you'll be astounded how much money that they are going to capture from the Illinois budget and all the other special favors they got from their the folks that are actually working for them, which are the Hispanic caucus members. They're not working for their own constituents. They're working for the illegal immigrants that are here. Let's just run down some numbers. Easily, it's $1 billion by my count that we are going to be giving illegal immigrants this year.
Oh, it's more than that, Jeannie.
Oh, it's got to be more, right? But
well, no, I mean,
start off.
The governor said that he only wanted $500 million, but we know that it's $1.1 billion. They're trying to limit people being able to access the health care. That's just that. We also have the All Kids, the insurance. We have MAP grants for
That's
education.
Right.
We're going to spend money educating these kids. The money that we're spending in the criminal justice to prosecute these criminals that are here illegally. I mean, I don't know that you could actually put a real dollar figure on it, but we know it's well over $1 billion.
Well, and they don't want to, right? Their whole idea is not to actually categorize all the spending, but we know that there are particular categories of spending. For example, welcoming centers, right, Brad? You discovered that the welcoming centers were well over $100 million.
Yeah. So again, this $1.1 billion as part of this healthcare may be the cheapest part of it. You know, Dan laid out a lot of points, the welcoming centers throughout, all the other stuff. But yet, again, there was a big showdown at the Chicago City Council just a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Tens of millions of dollars there for housing for illegals. The money that the feds are pouring into the state of Illinois for all this housing. I mean, that's just, the list just goes on and on.
Just off the top, I mean, there was just a Chicago Tribune article, $25 million Brandon Johnson asked for illegals to have rent assistance. Now, I mean, I know that you guys are charitable guys. I actually work for St. Vincent de Paul Society here in my local church, and we get calls all the time. I need help with the rent assistance. These are people really in need as well, and they're not going to just get, I don't know, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in rent assistance in 1 year. They're not getting it.
Well, and then you get into what's going on, and primarily in Chicago with the housing. They're talking about turning schools into housing. We're housing people in police stations, in the lobbies of police stations. What's the cost of that, just to maintain and keep that place up and feed people? I mean, it goes to Brad's point. $1 billion, I think, is just the starting point. I think it could be upwards to $2 billion. I don't know how you ever put I mean, they've got this stuff stuck around, scattered in 3,604 pages or 406 pages, whatever, in this budget. It's going to take months.
And of course, everybody read that budget ahead of time.
Yeah, I read the said budget.
That's what all you could, because
That's
then
all
you
you
were
could
voting
read
on it.
as it went by.
It
just went by, and it said, "Oh, there's the budget," and there it went.
Well, the good news is we did have a chance to look at it a little bit longer than we have in the past. Usually, right, they just waive the posting requirements, pop it out an hour, and we're voting on it. Yeah. Typically the wee hours of the morning.
So, I mean, I don't want to harp on it. I mean, everybody's got a little bit of a compassion for people that are trying to escape places like Venezuela. It's a terrible dictatorship. But this is what happens when you let socialism devolve into a dictatorship and there's no rule of law. I mean, this is something that they created. These guys are not really asylum seekers. They are economic migrants. They are fleeing political corruption. And that was very clear in an article that the Tribune did with one of these migrants that had just shown up. I mean, he said it's a political corruption. There's a scarcity there. He did not say that he was persecuted for religious beliefs or being the member of a particular identity group. No, this is all economic migration. And now there were a number of bills that are going to allow these illegal immigrants to even further ingrain themselves in society. Right. Tell me about the driver's license bill.
So 10 years ago when you and I were there together, there was this request to give illegals' driver's license. It was going to be a special, it would be specially marked, right? Because the reason was these folks are driving on the streets and the highways of Illinois. They're not able to get automobile insurance. So to make the highways and the roads and everything safer, we have to give them a driver's license, right? Well, fast forward 10 years later, these folks, the illegal brother, the sister, the parent, whatever, they can't get they can't get the prescription at the pharmacy. They can't pick up their alcohol. They're basically running errands, and now they say, well, they're being discriminated upon because they have these driver's licenses that are distinctly marked for illegal aliens. So what did the General Assembly do in the wee hours? They changed it to where the illegals, the marking is removed, and so their driver's license looks just like everybody else's in the state.
I mean, this is State Representative Barbara Hernandez's bill. She's a state representative out of the suburbs. She represents parts of Aurora. So for people who are listening, this is Barbara Hernandez, which probably she presents herself as really the mild, meek librarian, sort of looking person, really concerned about individuals. The truth is she's working harder for illegal immigrants than she is for her own citizens. Does anybody feel like this is the way to go? Because it actually is going to make them it's easier then to register them to vote. And we do know that they are okay with local voting of illegal immigrants.
Right. This is another bait and switch. I'm surprised it took 10 years. I mean, normally, when they pull this, we're just going to do this, and then we come back the next year, and all of a sudden, well, that wasn't enough. Now we have to do more. I'm really impressed that we kept them at bay for 10 years.
Well, back to the healthcare program in 2020 when that was passed, just a few people that was enrolled in that, 65 years and older, I think. They estimated it to be $1 billion. Sorry, misspoke. In 2020, it was to be $1 million. It actually was $2 million that year, and now here we are going into FY24, and again the estimate's 1.4 or 1.1, and so again, they just
that is all courtesy of my Congresswoman Delia Ramirez, who at that time was a state representative and passed that bill. Oh, we just need to take care of the senior illegal immigrants here, those age 65 and over, and then before you know it, it's a massive program of over $1 billion. Oh, the estimate's only $2 million.
Right. Now,
they reached that in 1 month.
41 down to age 41.
42 and older.
Right, 42 and older. Right. Yeah. So we'll see how this goes. And by the way, children are already covered.
Right.
And so they just had this gap now between 18 and 41.
So they'll be back.
Yeah, they'll be back for that. Yeah.
Well, they've got to figure out how to fill the budget hole, the $500 million budget hole. It's going to be interesting to watch because Governor Pritzker, to his credit, said, we're cutting off enrollment. We're going to make copays. If you show up, we're going to make you have a copay, I think $150 or $250 in the ER. He's proposing these things to help control the costs, to try to stay in that $500 million budget. But it's not going to work. You see the Hispanic caucus pushing back already. People are, they feel betrayed in a way because we gave the governor that special privilege that he could the power to go in and move money around.
So now he's got the power and he can do this just by rulemaking.
Right. Well, he doesn't have to do that. I just stroke of a pen and he can put another.
Oh, just emergency powers and he can do it.
Emergency powers. He can put another $500, $600, $800 million in that program.
Well, let's go. Speaking of emergency powers, Brad, you just sent me a listing today that you had received. $1.3 billion in the FY24 budget is actually coming from a fund called the State Coronavirus Urgent Remediation Emergency Fund. Okay, so this is supposed to be COVID money. It's coming from the federal government, $1.3 billion. But I got to tell you that is loaded up with just pork projects that have nothing to do with COVID and nothing to do with an emergency.
Tons of creation of new programs, expansions of ones that were created earlier.
Yes.
Priorities are completely out of whack. Pork.
Some program called Working for Womanhood. I have no idea what that is.
Well, this is a party that can't identify what a woman is. How can they have a program that says Working for Woman?
How can they give that money away? They ask them what's a woman, and
And they don't know.
They don't know. So how can they give that money away?
I mean, but this is exactly what the congressional Republicans were speaking about. Like, there's a lot of unspent funds. Well, there's $1.3 billion just in Illinois in the FY24 budget that is unspent funds that have nothing related to do with COVID.
Right, and they're in denial about the unemployment fraud that dealt with, the handling of the coronavirus dollars at the state. They're in denial about the reality of what happened there, how many dollars there. It's estimated to be billions. They're saying, well, it's a few hundred million.
Okay, but Pritzker did come back and he extended the time frame for which you can prosecute for fraud people who, unethically took this unemployment money. So he's trying to claw some back. I mean, I don't know, because the estimates on that are huge.
It's one thing. Just we passed the bill that extended the deadline for clawing the money back, but you actually have to do it. I mean, it's okay to have a bill that gets passed and you can walk around and tell everybody, oh yeah, we've got more time now to go after these fraudsters. We can't get an honest answer. How much have you gotten back? How many people defrauded us? And here's the real problem with this is that this is an insurance fund. This money came out of the unemployment insurance fund. That fund is paid into by employers. So when that fund doesn't have enough money, state of Illinois goes back to every employer and raises their premium. That's a tax on every job in that employer's company. That's how that money gets paid back. So if you aren't really actively going out and trying to claw back this fraud, it's just window dressing. I want to see it happen. I want to see people drug out and held up and said, okay, you filed for unemployment. And they did. Didn't they do a bunch of state employees up in Chicago? Didn't they name them that had filed for unemployment and they worked for the government?
Yes. Yeah, I did see that, but it's not enough because the estimate initially was $4.5 billion of unemployment fraud only in the state of Illinois.
Right.
Then they kind of lowered it to $2 billion. Regardless, either one of those numbers is a massive amount of money, especially when it is coming out of employer pockets, which means consumers are going to get hit in the end with it.
Right.
Right, and they could have used coronavirus dollars to replenish the fund when it went billions underwater, right? They used a few. They borrowed $700 million from other funds in the state, other GRF or other state funds, whatever the case might be. But we're still sitting on this $1.3 billion of coronavirus. Why didn't we use some of those dollars to replenish this unemployment trust
That's
fund?
a really good question.
But no, we're going to create new programs.
Literally, thank you for giving me that list. I think we should publish it, and people will be appalled. There's one line item that just says various. It doesn't even identify.
Various?
It just says various cost.
Well,
it doesn't even say exactly what it's going to.
Hold on. Various?
Various. What is that?
I don't know, but I'm going to call my attorney. I'm changing my name.
Oh, okay, there you go.
I'm going to change my name to Various. How much is in there?
Well, speaking of employers, this one really caught my eye because I was not really aware of this until I had seen your slide deck that you shared with me for your town halls, and I just found it very interesting. So they have this Equal Pay Act, and it's literally unenforceable. It is a trial lawyer's dream because he can sue. You can have any employee sue for any reason. It's going to impose fines on any company with 15 or more employees that fails to include the pay scale benefits for a position in any specific job posting. So ahead of time, because there's a little bit of gamesmanship. I'm coming in to interview for a job.
Right.
Well, what was your previous salary? Now, I thought that we had legislation prior to this that said that an employer can't ask what their previous salary was. I think that we put that in legislation.
I think that's right.
Well, now we're forcing employers to here's the salary range, here's what we pay, here's all the benefits. So people come in and are like, oh, well, I'm going to ask for X. And it's a gotcha bill.
Well, what happens?
What happened with this bill?
Oh, well.
You guys are on Labor and Commerce, aren't you? Didn't it go through that committee?
No.
Oh, okay.
So this is like a 2-for-1. It's a mandate on business.
Yes.
And it strips their power to do what they want to do. And it's just this is a debacle.
Well, and what happens if I'm interviewing you and you know that this job pays $16 an hour and you say, I don't think I can leave my current job. I'd like to come to work for you, but I need more. And I'm thinking, Jeannie Ives is the perfect candidate. She's going to come to work every day. She's going to add value to my company. How about I offer you $18 an hour? And you go, okay, that's a lot better. But yet, when I advertised the job, I only said $16 an hour job. So can somebody sue me because I said the job paid $16 an hour, but when you interviewed, I offered you $18? Now, did I not post the pay scale properly?
Or maybe I'm special, and so I got a special pay rate.
Well, you are special.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but I mean that's a whole premise.
But I'm just saying,
this
is as Brad said, this is just like the biometric law. This is going to drive companies, keep companies out, drive companies out of here. You know, we didn't address that. Here's another law. I mean, you know, and then you get the unemployment thing, and you go on and on and on, and it's just. It's no wonder.
So you've got a whole host of your colleagues down there that essentially think that they know how to run everybody's business better than they than the actual owners of the business. Right. That there's nothing beyond their realm to regulate about your business. Oh, by the way, right? And the employers are always out to get their employees. Those are the three things, their premise that they come into on the Democrat side when they're looking at any law dealing with business. That's always their premises, and it's wrong.
These are not well thought out ideas.
No.
And like we refer to it, either the puzzle palace or the bad idea factory, because it's puzzling and it is bad ideas and bad policy after bad policy. And we're experiencing that right now with the litigation, with the bills that were passed this year and a couple of years ago with the Safety Act or the Unsafety Act.
Yeah, so a lot of those had to go back for review.
Right.
Not well thought out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, you want to understand the mindset of these far left Democrats.
I can't.
No, but I want to delve into that. But look no further than what happened this week with LaShawn Ford, Representative LaShawn Ford.
Okay, I don't know. Tell me. I know LaShawn.
He wants to put a tax on every ticket sold to these events in Chicago, like Lollapalooza and all this and that. If you're going to have an event at a park in Chicago, he wants to tax that ticket to give money back to the neighborhood because they're making money. I read the article. These events, these fairs, these gatherings are money makers. Yes, it's a business, and they're in business to make money so they can pay themselves for taking that risk. But LaShawn says, no, you're making money and it's not coming back to my neighborhood. So we want to tax every ticket, every person that comes into your event because you're a rich business person. You're making money. And that's the mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those Lala tickets are, you know, what are they, a few $100s actually. They're expensive already. I mean, it's just crazy.
But he wants a piece of that action.
Of course he wants a piece of the action, even though he couldn't set up his own business to take a piece of the action.
No.
It's always somebody else's, you know, I deserve what you have already.
Right, and
it's
that's
really
what we're seeing.
Well, let's turn to taxes, actually, because I was in Houston last week visiting the granddaughter. Not my son. I was visiting the granddaughter.
Thank you.
Okay, right.
And if he's listening, that's...
Yeah, if he's listening, it's great. And, you know, I filled up for $2.99 a gallon. And here, it's like $4.29 in Wheaton. I mean, it's outrageous. Now, a lot of that has to do with the gas tax, right? It's, what, two tax increases this year?
Yeah, so a year ago when it was election season, the governor thought it was good to give some tax relief, but he didn't really give tax relief. He just suspended for a time the taxes that were to go into place for the gas tax increase in July that happens every year as a result of the 2019 legislation. Yeah. And but he pushed the July 1st off till January 1st. So this year we get two gas tax increases, January and July 1st.
What happened between July 1st and January 1st?
Of last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there was an election.
There
and the governor was reelected.
There was a governor.
You know, and it
go.
was cool to suspend the grocery tax for 1 year, saving everybody 1%. And then for a time period there in August, he suspended sales tax on school supplies for a period of a few days. But now that the election's over, that was then, this is now. Just on the grocery tax and the school supplies, $430 million tax increase went back on to, or it will, I guess, in July or June 30th, the end here right away, when that grocery tax suspension goes away, a $430 million increase on the citizens of the state of Illinois.
Well, that's because we have to pay for illegal health care, illegal immigrant health care.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, okay.
So why is it okay to have tax relief to some extent during an election year, but a year later, it's not good.
Right.
So yeah, so your gas tax will go up another 6 cents a gallon.
Well, I mean, I kind of did my own math on some of this, and I looked at the, the Illinois Department of Revenue about the taxes. So we have multiple taxes, right? We have gas taxes, then we have sales taxes.
Sales tax.
You probably, I don't know what you guys have in Shelby County, but in DuPage County, there's a 3 cent per gallon gas tax. If you live in Carroll Stream in DuPage County, there's an additional city 3 cent per gallon tax. And then all those taxes have a sales tax on top of it. And when you really add this up, especially if you're looking at a local tax on top of it, you're looking at literally the highest taxes and at approaching nearly $1 per gallon in this county.
Yeah, I think with this new tax in July, we'll be like 4th in the nation on taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And the sales tax,
I actually think that we're first when you include the sales tax.
I don't disagree, and I think that's the big factor too. We need to look at during these inflationary times.
Yes.
When the cost of everything's going up, the sales tax on gasoline goes up accordingly, and so it's a tax on a tax. It's insane. It needs to be repealed or reduced. People have had it, but So
what else sticks in your mind about what's going on in the state of Illinois? I mean, you guys, you're in central Illinois. It's really God's country. Honestly, it's very much a red area. Mm-hmm. It's not like it is up here. And I often get the question from folks that I know down there: what's wrong with the suburbs? Why are you guys voting differently? What's going on? And I don't know what to tell them. Actually.
Yeah,
so
well, I think
what else do people up here need to understand?
Yeah, I think that the one big policy debate is the alternative energy stuff, the CEJA stuff, and how they want to shove all these windmills, wind generating facilities, and electrical generating windmills. I'll get it there in a second. The solar fields, they want to put all that outside of Cook and the Collier counties, and I'm not really sure how this is going to work. I mean, they continue to cover up some of the most fertile farmland in the state of Illinois with literally thousands of acres of solar panels, and our population continues to grow. I'm really not sure how the food production is going to keep up with this desire to move from coal and gas-fired electricity generation into solar and wind when you cover up all your food production. I don't know how that's going to go, and how it's going to go is.
Well, we know how it's going to go.
Yeah,
they're now wanting to build transmission lines that come out of state into our state, and that is not going to come from solar fields and windmills. It's going to come from coal and gas-fired plants in Louisiana pushing power up here because we've shut down our coal and gas plants here. Am I right?
You're correct.
Right.
No, that's very simple. It's very easy to understand. I mean, when you can't meet the demand and you have to go out in the open market and bid at auction to buy something. I mean, think about, I don't care, just go to a local auction house and there's a dresser that you want, and the three of us all want that dresser. So you bid $10 and I bid $12 and Brad bids $15 and you bid $17 and I go, no, I'm bidding $20. Brad says, I'm going to bid $25. And pretty soon a $15 dresser is $50. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening because
with electricity.
Yeah,
yep,
with electricity.
Yeah, they don't have a clear-cut plan to transition from traditional baseload generation of coal and natural gas into the clean energy. They don't have a clear-cut plan, and so that's what spiked prices a year and a half ago, like you're talking about, Dan. The demand outpaced the supply because of lack of a clear-cut plan. And so that thus put in 34.45 this spring that imports the energy from out of state, which is what we predicted 2 years ago.
Well, and that bill was interesting because the environmentalists knew exactly what was going on, which is why they said no.
Right.
Because they know that they're importing fossil fuels, which is anathema to them.
Right.
So everybody knows, and nobody's talking about it. Oh, by the way, my favorite one is we're going to have 1 million electrical vehicles in the state of Illinois by 2030.
And every school bus. Don't forget every school bus.
They've got basically 6.5 years, and I think we have maybe 55,000 EVs total in the state, but they're going to get to 1 million.
Right. Here's another problem we have with this is that driving up the cost of electricity because we have to go outside of Illinois to buy it has jacked up everybody's electric rates. All of our utility bills are 2 and 3 times what they were. If we were still generating enough electricity within our border or close to it, our electric rates would be down substantially. It would be back down to where it was. Then we could afford to raise our electric rates to actually do the infrastructure that we need. A lot of the problems we're going to suffer is the aging infrastructure, our power lines, these power poles. You drive around, there's a lifespan on them, and we're not keeping up. And we cannot afford to raise the rates on ratepayers to pay for the necessary repairs and maintenance and upkeep on this infrastructure. And that's the real tragedy of what we're doing, besides having people paying 3 times what they should.
Well, and that's what we're hearing from ComEd in our area. I know you guys are Ameren customers,
Same
but
thing.
ComEd went out and asked for $980 million because they need to do additional repairs. This is after this company has received billions of dollars in subsidies that they said that they needed to keep their nuke plants open. Well, Exelon, but they really were all the same company at one point. I mean, it's just like... I don't know what they think that they're doing, but everybody's prices we'd be better off if we had generate our own electricity. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Anyway.
Well, every foot of coal or every foot of Illinois land has coal underneath it. Some of the richest coal reserves in central and southern Illinois. They've shut that stuff down prematurely. For years, we've imported coal from the western states because of the sulfur content. And again, this puts a deficit on growing crops because sulfur is important. So there was a part of that cycle that the crops were scrubbing that sulfur naturally, but yet sulfur back then was the boogeyman, and now CO2 is the boogeyman.
And now you're artificially putting sulfur into your plants because they're not pulling it from the air.
We don't have an atmosphere like we used to have.
Right. So when it rains.
But these guys aren't farmers. Barbara Hernandez isn't a farmer.
I mean, most of those over there have never really held a real job in their life. They've just kind of grown up through the governmental system, and this is what they know, and this is how they make policy. And it doesn't lend itself very well to good policy making.
No. Well, we're glad that you guys are a voice of reason. Okay, so we're kind of at our limit of our time frame. It was great to talk with you. There's so much more we could talk about, but we'll keep it at this where we are right now. So thanks a lot for joining me on The Real Story.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here, and hope to see you again soon.
Okay.